Okay guys, Private Jack here. This is part 2 on the tutorials on how to fix your hats. We're going to primarily focus on the Archimedes in this particular tutorial. I've tried to do this one before. I ended up at 31 minutes doing the Archimedes. I didn't get into any of the other hats, so what I might do is 2 or 3 on the individual hats themselves. And work on from there. The other thing is my tutorials get rather long because I primarily focus for the novice user. Want to be able to bring these guys along at the same time, so if you have previous knowledge of the programs we're about to use in this tutorial, what you can do is you can actually skip ahead and get to the part where you need to be and work the tutorial from there. So that being said, let's get on with this. We're going to work with the Archimedes in this particular case, and in part 1 we talked about the programs that we're going to use here. Source FilmMaker, everybody told you where to get it and how to install it. GCFscape, if you haven't got the Boogaloo items into Source FilmMaker, I have a tutorial on the channel on how to get them in. GIMP, you can either use GIMP, Photoshop, or Paint.net. It's up to you, your preference, but I'm going to focus on the GIMP program here. I've also added a plugin to GIMP so that I can work with the VTF files directly. You're going to need Notepad++ or a suitable text editing program to be able to edit the VMT files so that you can paint your item, and VTF Edit, which is a program that allows you to view, export, and work with VTF files. If you've got the plugin loaded for GIMP, Photoshop, and Paint.net, then you don't really need to go into VTF Edit, and in this tutorial we're probably not even going to touch on it. So that being said, let's get on with the video. First thing we're going to do is we're going to launch Source FilmMaker. Now I've already got a session created with these hats in it, and I'm going to open that up. Takes a little bit for it to open because it is a rather large file. Okay, so we're going to focus on the Archimedes here. If I come into my work camera and zoom in on this guy, you can see that I have the red skin loaded. If I change the skin to the blue skin, all that changes is the eye color. Now I want this bird to be paintable, and I don't want him black. I want him to be a, I don't know, a gray color to begin with when he loads in. Kind of like a robot that he is. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to edit the material file for this particular model. I'm going to open up GIMP. Now if you're loading GIMP for the first time, it's going to take quite some time for it to load, because what it has to do is it has to go through and it has to find its plugins. Okay, so just wait for it to load, and the next time you load it, it should be quicker unless you're adding more add-ons to it. I'm going to set up a toolbar off to the side here. Windows, dockable dialog. I need layers. Windows, dockable dialog. I want channels. Windows, dockable dialog. I want color. And those are primarily the 3 that I need. Now if I actually wanted to sit down and paint the textures that I'm going to work with and and make them nice and pretty and TF2y, then I would actually add brushes. And to do that, just add your brushes, and there's all your brushes. Now that I've got my toolbar set up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close off, close off this dockable items area here, expand my screen a little bit, and what I'm doing is I'm hovering my mouse over till I get those double bars, and then I push down on the left key and just drag it over. And now I'm going to open up some materials. I'm going to File, Open, and I'm going to point to C, Program Files, x86 for us 64-bit guys, Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Source Filmmaker, Game, TF, Materials, Models, Workshop. And what I've done with my, here you see player and player org, what I've done is I've taken my players folder and I've actually made a backup copy so that if I really screw things up, I can come back into my backups and get my materials back to where they were originally. So from there I'm going to go to Player, Items, Medic, and into the robot Archimedes. And what I can see here are all the VTF files, because I've got the plugin installed in my GIMP to work with VTF files directly. And I'm going to select the Robo-Medic Archimedes Blue Color VTF and the Robo-Medic Archimedes Color. I'm holding down the Control key. I've selected the first one. I'm holding down the Control key and pushing the left mouse button to select the second one. And I'm going to open those. Now you may not see color 2. That's me playing around in the background. Anyway, when it opens, what you're going to get are the 2 VTF files up here in the upper left hand corner. Okay, let's work with the blue Archimedes first. And what you see here doesn't look like much of a picture. If you look over here and select the layers, what you're going to find is that this material is actually made up of 2 layers. It's got its original layer and it has a masking layer. And it's the original layer that is actually giving us the problem. I'm going to right click on the layers. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to disable the layer mask, which is this one, and it is currently overlaying on top of the material file. Disabling it will make it disappear. I can actually see my material file now. I'm going to right click on the layers again. I'm going to click on Edit the Layer Mask, and I'm going to click on Show the Layer Mask. And this is what the layer mask looks like. Now this is supposed to be the layer that actually gets the paint and it's applied to, as an overlay, to the other material, to the actual material file. Now I'm going to turn off the show the layer mask, and I come back into the material file, and this is the material that is giving us that black Archimedes, because anywhere that the bird is supposed to be colored is black. Now to fix it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my layers and I'm right clicking on the layer again. I'm going to edit the layer mask, and I'm going to show the layer mask again. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select all these black areas on the overlay. Okay, so I right click on the material file, go to select. I'm going to select by color, and I'm going to click a black place on the material. And that will select anything that is black. In TF, anything that is pure black is a transparent material. Now that I have that selected, what I'm going to do is I'm going to invert it, invert the selection so that I then have the gray whitish colors selected. So I'm going to right click on the material, select, and I'm going to invert. Now if I was to copy this and paste it somewhere, I would get all this gray and double gray area. We're going to experiment here, and we're going to actually copy this, edit, copy. We're going to go back into our layers, and we are going to turn off show the layer mask. We're going to turn off edit the layer mask, and that will bring us to the ability to edit our actual material. I'm going to right click on the material, edit, and paste. So now what I've done is I've taken those gray areas of the mask and put it back onto the material. I'm going to now what'll happen is it will give me a floating section up top. I right click on the floating section and I anchor that layer. And what that will do is it will push it down onto the material so that I now have the material with a gray-white outline for the Archimedes. I'm going to re-enable the mask, and now what happens is this area here is what the bird would look like if I was to apply this material to the bird. Instead of looking like this, where it's all black, it'll now be gray-white. I'm not quite finished yet. What I'm going to do is do an experiment here, because the last time I did this, when I painted the bird, it didn't come through as an actual true color. I have to come back in now, and I'm going to edit the layer mask. I'm going to show the layer mask. I'm going to select by color all the black area. I'm going to select and invert the selection. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take and I'm going to edit that selection, and I'm going to turn it white. Now my colors, where are my colors? Right here. I have my foreground color as black and my background color as white. So I'm going to click on this, I'm going to edit, and I'm going to fill the selection with the background color. This is now pure white. I'm going to come back into my layers. I'm going to turn off edit the layer mask, and then I'm going to turn off show the layer mask. And now I'm going to save this file, or oh sorry, before I do that, I'm going to right click on the layers again, and I'm going to apply the layer mask. So now I only have one image. I'm going to now export this image back into a VTF format. So I have to export, and I'm going to send it back to the original file name that I had opened. Export, replace. This is the VTF properties information. It tells me it's compressed material, it has an alpha channel, and it's an advanced VTF. Its version is 7.4. I'm going to click OK, and that it does have MIP maps. I'm going to click OK, and it has now exported. I'm going to close down VTF or GIMP for a second. I'm going to come back into my source filmmaker. I'm going to move my cursor here so that I can see the bird again. It's still black, and it was the blue one that we actually edited. And even if I change the skin, the red is still black. How do I fix it? Now that I've changed the material for the blue bird, what I do is I come into the console, I come down to the command line, and I type mat _ reload all materials. Source filmmaker will whirl away for a couple of seconds, and then it'll display a whole bunch of errors, which you can actually ignore because we're not working with that. And now when I come in here and I change my skin back to the blue, lo and behold, I have a gray bird with a blue eye, some black still there. That's okay. But he is now a robotic gray. I'm going to try and paint this bird now, and to do that I'm going to open Notepad++. I'm going to go File, Open, and I'm going to point to C, Program Files, x86 for a 64-bit guys, Steam Apps, Common Source Filmmaker, Game, TF, Materials, Models, Workshop, Player, Items, Medic, Robotic Medic Archimedes, and I'm going to open the blue VMT file. Now you're going to see right here, this is the one that I want. Open this up, and I'm going to look for a command line that says $ color tint base, and I'm going to change this to this number here, which is an RGB color number, to something that I want to experiment with. So I'm going to come into colors here again, and I want them to be a dark red, something like that. Now I'm using the GIMP color selection tool, and what I need now is the RGB color for this particular color. If I come over here and I click on scales, these three numbers here are the RGB color number for this red. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to change this to 152 10 10, and I'm just going to file save that. Come back into Source Filmmaker, click on the console, do my mat _ reload all materials again, hit enter, let it whirl around in the background for a couple of seconds, come back into the animation set editor and move my mouse button, or my playhead, and lo and behold, look at that. My robotic gray Archimedes has now turned red. Yes, there's still some black areas on it, but that's paint and robotic oils and whatnot else, so that looks okay. If I change excuse me, if I change my skin back to the red color, I'm going to find that he's still black. Well, how do I fix that? We have to do the same thing, only for the other material file. And that was for the Robotic Medic Archimedes color VTF. We come back into the layers, disable the layer mask, edit the layer mask, show the layer mask, right click on the layer mask, select by color, select all the black area, select invert, right click on the material, edit, copy, come back over here to the materials, the layers, turn off, edit the layer mask, turn off, show the layer mask, right click on the materials, edit, paste, gives us the floating selection area, right click on that, anchor the layer, so now our material has that gray colored material. Right click on the layer again, edit the layer, show the layer, and it's still disabled. Right click on the material for the layer, select by color all the black area, invert the colors, select invert, right click on here, edit, fill with the background color or whatever, whichever, if you've got the foreground set to white or the background set to white, fill with whatever, okay, so that it's white. Come back into the layer, uncheck disable, uncheck edit, uncheck show layer mask, right click on the layer, apply the layer mask, file, export, and you're going to export the Robotic Archimedes color, replace, OK, come back into Source FilmMaker, go into the console, make sure you, before you go there, you can make sure you've got your skin set to the red one, and you can see still black. We have to tell Source FilmMaker to reload the materials. Excuse me. Come back into the animation set editor, move the playhead, and there's our gray bird again. Only this time it's the red skin. To edit and paint it, open up Notepad++, file, open, and select the Robotic Archimedes VMT. Here you can see that the color numbers are that. Come back into GIMP, find an appropriate color. I'm going to change him to be a trader bird. He's going to be blue. So I want color numbers 26, 3, 103. Change this. The color tint base to 26, 3, 103. Save it. I can exit out of Notepad++ now. I can exit out of GIMP now. And I come back into Source FilmMaker, come down here, reload matte underscore reload all materials. Let it whirl around in the background. Let it whirl around in the background. Okay. Once it's finished, come into the animation set editor, move the playhead, and there's my blue-red bird. So I got a red blue bird, and I got a blue red bird. And that's how you fix the Archimedes. Now I'm going to carry on this tutorial. We'll look at the heavy bots, heavy tungsten Toque, because I think there's a little more to that one than there is the other ones. The demo Captain 1 is pretty straightforward. It's almost the same as doing the Archimedes, as is the Gibus, and so is the actual Pyro's last watt. So with that, I'm going to close off this particular tutorial and move on to tutorial number 3. With that, Private Jack out.